He asked our son to help him pick out which shade of pink he wanted, which crib to get, what the theme should be, etc., and it was all so adorable. I don't want to reveal any personal medical history, so forgive me for being vague with the descriptions. At our last doctor's visit a few days ago, we were given the news that our daughter has several severe birth defects. They think that she could possibly survive the birth, but any life that she gets to experience will be painful for her. There have been medical cases of babies with the same conditions, rarely surviving from early childhood to the teenage years, and these poor children suffer with so much pain and are uncomfortable their entire lives. They are very low functioning and need around-the-clock care, as well as several uncomfortable surgeries to try and give them a better quality of life. We were both heartbroken and cried for hours together in the car, then we drove home in silence. Neither of us said anything until my husband began to quietly mumble his thoughts. He was going on and on about how we needed to schedule another doctor's appointment so we know what medical equipment we'd need to buy for her, and we should renovate the nursery again so we could care for her more easily. He said that he'd definitely have to talk to his boss so he can take a longer paternal leave, and he wants to be by her side in the hospital until we can take her home. He talked about how we'd have to ask his mom to babysit our son more often while she's a newborn, and he even said that maybe we could sell one of our cars, move to a smaller house, and take our son out of private school so we'd have more money to pay for our daughter's care. I was silent until he asked me what I thought. I was blunt and said that I think we should terminate the pregnancy. Now I feel bad for saying it that way, but I was still frazzled from the news. This made him very upset. He began to cry and ask why I don't want our daughter, even with the complications. I mentioned our previous termination, and he said it was different because it was unplanned and we had no way to take care of the child. Now, we're in a pretty good place financially, so theoretically we could shoulder the cost of our daughter. I have a bit of personal history with this type of situation. My best friend in high school was at my house all the time because her parents were way too busy with her severely low-functioning older brother. They did love her, but she was pushed to the side her entire childhood, and I told him this story. He said that we do better by our son and daughter, and that my best friend's parents were stupid for having a second child, after already knowing they'd need to give the older brother extra care and attention. He then seemed hopeful for a minute and asked if I was just afraid. He promised that he'd be by my side the entire time and we could do this together. I told him it's not about fear. Our daughter will be in constant pain if she's born, and it would be a short and painful life for her. I love this baby so much already, I don't want her to suffer like that. He began to yell that even if she doesn't live long, we could still pour our hearts and souls into making her life as fulfilling as possible. I didn't respond, and he stormed inside. It's been a couple of days now, and he won't even look me in the eyes. He sits in the new nursery for hours, and our son is very confused. I know he's grieving, but I really don't want to go further with this pregnancy. I love him so much, I have no idea what to do now. Update 1. After I made my original post, my husband and I rushed to get a second opinion. Nothing changed, and it was still our original diagnosis. Once I learned that, I scheduled the termination for as soon as physically possible. I didn't tell my husband at first. He kept on raving about how we could give her as much love in her life as we can, and I feel bad for this now, but I snapped and angrily told him I was terminating the pregnancy, that I know how he feels, but I will not allow my daughter to suffer just because he wants to love her. He was furious with me after I put my foot down. After he realized his pleading wouldn't change my mind, he didn't speak a word to me. It was like he refused to even acknowledge my existence. I was terrified that he'd go and leave me all alone with the scraps of our family. I tried to explain it to my son, but he doesn't understand because he's too young. Then, the night before the procedure, my husband stepped into my room and apologized for everything and promised to be more supportive of me from now on. I was so happy and relieved I started to sob, and he held me all night. My original plan was that my mom would drive me to the hospital, then once it's done, a close friend would take me home. Since it was only the night before, he said he couldn't miss a full day of work, but really wanted to drive me home. I agreed to let him, and the procedure was done the following morning. My son had a long sleepover with my best friend's family, because I didn't want him to see me like this. In the morning, the termination was done, and it went fine with only minor physical pain, but the emotional toll was crushing. After I was done, he didn't show up to get me. I waited for hours, but he wouldn't answer any of my calls. I ended up having to call a friend out from work to take me home. When we got there, I saw just one note on the counter saying, "I can't do this," and a few of our daughter's special toys were removed from her nursery. My entire life has fallen apart in a matter of days. I asked my mom to watch my son for a little while, and I still can't contact my husband. Everything feels so pointless.